Today we're going to talk about heart disease. I'm a paramedic in Waco, and so I know a little bit about heart stuff. And I just want to be able to share a little bit of my medical knowledge and things that I have found recently. I've been going through Hebrews and my Me and Jesus time, and I ran into this, and it just hit me like a mountain. I was telling Christy about how all this came about, that I was sitting back there listening to one of her sermons, and I'm a songwriter. I'm not used to being here. I'm used to being over there. And I was like, all these ideas are flooding me, and I don't know what to do with them. And she was like, well, what do you usually do? I'm like, well, I write it down, and it's usually a song, and I go in my closet and play my guitar for Jesus, and that's it. Well, this is a really strange song. And so she was like, okay, well, write it down and see what happens. And so I tell Dino about it whenever it was all in the works and things that were going on. And so this is one of the things that came out of it. So we're going to be in Hebrews chapter 3. That's where I found this. If y'all have your swords or your phone, I have my Bible on my phone. And we're going to go through verses 7 through 13 today. That's going to be the focus. And the nature of what we're going to talk about is the heart. And I'm sorry if this sounds really rehearsed, because it really is, because I'm super nervous. So I'm going to go ahead and read the first part, and then I'll give a little bit of a background of kind of what's going on. In verse 7, it says, therefore, just as the Holy Spirit says, today if you hear his voice, do not harden your hearts as when they provoked me, as in the day of trial in the wilderness, where your fathers tried me by testing me and saw my works for 40 years. Therefore I was angry with this generation and said, they always go astray in their heart, and they did not know my ways. As I swore in my wrath, they shall not enter my rest. Take care, brethren, that there not be in any one of you an evil, unbelieving heart that falls away from the living God, but encourage one another day after day, as long as it is still today, so that none of you will be hardened by the deceitfulness of sin. So the writer of Hebrews here is talking about the spiritual heart. And so I'm going to parallel a little bit of the spiritual heart with what I know about the physical heart, because I find that there's a huge correlation in the disease processes that we go through. Kind of we walk through that in our spiritual life too. And if we ignore that, we're going to see what happens. So according to the American Heart Association, there's every 30 seconds in America, somebody dies from heart disease, whether that be a heart attack or irregular heartbeat. 30 seconds, somebody dies. So that means by this time tomorrow that 2,600 people are going to die from heart disease. That's a lot of folks. Moms, dads, wives, brothers, sisters, aunts, uncles. It doesn't matter if you're male or female or black or white or purple. It doesn't matter. It attacks everybody the same way, and nobody can hide from it. It is the number one killer among females and males, and it accounts for 50% of all deaths. That's a big number. You can take cancer and car wrecks and add them all together, and they still don't equal what the number is for people who die from heart disease in the United States. And I find that fascinating, because you would think that people would know numbers like that we would take more of a step to kind of fix those problems. I don't know if you've ever been a witness to somebody who has sprung up, they've received Jesus, and they're so vibrant that God has spoken to them, they have heard, they have listened, they come up and they're excited for God and Jesus, and they just get on fire, and the blood is flowing and things are happening, and their heart is so alive, and then life happens. And they get down, and they allow things to build up inside their heart. And in the medical field, hardening of the heart is called atherosclerosis. That's a big old word. And basically what that is, that's a hardening of the actual vessels, not the actual heart. And so the significance of that is I feel like there's a correlation between physical and spiritual, that physically inside your heart, inside these arteries, this atherosclerosis happens and the plaque builds up in the arteries. And we allow it to stay there and we don't do anything to fix it. And in the spiritual life, we'll walk along, we'll start out vibrant and this plaque builds up and we leave it there and we don't do anything about it. We don't go get checked out. We don't do anything and it just stays there and builds up. And so that's what I mean by disease processes. And that happens to everybody. Whether it happens quickly or slowly, it happens to everybody and you can't hide from it. So through the neglect of our heart and our diets and lifestyle, this happens. And this is what leads to heart attacks. In the medical field, we don't really call them heart attacks, or at least as paramedics we don't. We like to use fancy words like acute myocardial infarction. That's kind of fun to say sometimes. Or AMI or STEMI. That's when we can read it on an EKG monitor. That's kind of misleading to me whenever I heard that. Acute. This is not an acute problem. This is from years of neglect. Which leads to an acute problem and I would say, is close to 100% preventable if we would just take the time to notice. So I told you that I was a paramedic in Waco. In EMS, we have this saying, it's failure to plan on your part does not constitute emergency on mine. I pick people up all the time. They're like, you're not going to use your lights and sirens? Not for belly pain, sorry. And so I'm thankful that Jesus doesn't work like that. That we can neglect and do whatever we want to and walk on our own path and allow these disease processes to happen. And he comes in at the last second and he says, okay, I'm going to clean it out. We're going to give you the clot busters to get the plaque out. We're going to go into the cath lab and we're going to take it out. And he does it immediately. And usually, we're getting better with heart attacks now, but 15 years ago, it was pretty much a death sentence if you had a heart attack. It wasn't good. So I'm so thankful that Jesus doesn't work like that. So to give you the background on Hebrews, it's written to a group of Jewish believers who are in danger of falling away from the faith. And in Hebrews 1, he talks about the greatness of Jesus compared to the angels. And if you know Hebrew culture and history, angels played a huge part because they're the ones that brought down the law to Moses. And so they play a huge part. And so Hebrews, they don't take that lightly, that angels are super important. They're not just some little figurine on a shelf that we leave in our house. And then in chapter 2, they start talking about that there's a salvation that Jesus has offered us, that it's greater than anything that came before. And they're talking about the law. That kind of set up the way for Jesus to come in and kind of knock that out and be like, no more sacrifices. I am the sacrifice, and it's done. And so we've gone from the spiritual realm in chapter 1 and chapter 2, and then in chapter 3 they bring it down to earth. Like, how does that play in now? I understand that Jesus is up there doing his thing. How does that affect me? And so that's kind of what he's talking about now in chapter 3. He says that Jesus is, yes, he's better than the angels and also better than Moses, who is also a huge figure in Hebrew culture. Because of the law, he kind of set up the way of life for the Hebrews. And that Moses led them out of Egypt into the land. He was leading them to the land of promise. And because of their own their own sin and their own unbelief and the evil, unbelieving heart, God was like, okay, y'all can just chill out in the desert and be in unrest because I've offered this to you. There was an invitation, and I led you right to the edge of the river, and I told you it was right over there, and you didn't take it. And so, okay, we're going to do unrest. You don't know my ways. And so they wander around in the desert because of their own disobedience. So now that we have the example of the Israelites, I find myself understanding where they're coming from, because I feel like I do this a lot, that God's like, it's right there. Go get it. And I'm like, I don't know. Like I could walk through the Red Sea and a week later come up on a river and be like, there's a river in the way. And God's like, no, I got this. I just opened this sea last week, and I'm like, but there's a river. And so in my own personal life, I've actually done this. Mark and I used to be, whenever this church was new, we were both a part of it, and I would help lead worship sometimes, and he ran sound, and we stepped out of our roles and, sought the whole marriage deal and wanted to spend time and focus on that while going to church and kind of go headstrong into that. And so since we've walked into our marriage, we've kind of been in and out on coming to church and being responsible and doing our part. And I say all that to say that I walk up to the river, it's right there. I've got these great things that are going to happen for me. And I'm like, I don't know. So Hebrews chapter 3, this is a warning. And there's a sense of urgency in here that I think that we definitely need to take note. And the focus of our message today is going to be Hebrews chapter 3, verses 12 and 13. So it says, take care. That is an action that we need to take. That taking is a verb, and so whenever we read that, we should think there's something that I'm supposed to do. So what are we taking care of? We're taking care of our heart. That's what he wants to talk about. And so there's two ways that I'm going to point out that we can prevent heart disease. And one of the ways is to get regular checkups. I don't know if any one of y'all go get like a yearly exam done. So you can walk into a doctor's office and go get a x-ray done, blood test, a EKG, a stress test, or whatever they want to do. And so you walk into that responsibility knowing that you need to take care of yourself. You walk into church, same thing. You walk into this place of responsibility and to take care of your spiritual heart. And so sometimes we don't always deal with that the best way that we can. And what I mean by that is we walk into church, and I have this happen to me every time I walk in. I love it. How are you doing? And so two things happen. One, either they just want me to say, oh, I'm good. I've had a few people that I'm like, it's really, really not good right now. And they're like, oh, okay. and they're caught off guard because I'm ready to be open and honest. And they're just like, hey, how you doing? And was just expecting a high five and go on about your day. And so I really like coming here because people are open and honest, and you don't have to hide junk. You don't have to dress up for church. You can come and be who you are. And I can really appreciate that, because I feel like we don't have to walk in legalism, that I am safe here, that these people really love Jesus and don't care what else is going on, just that you love Jesus and they're going to help you do that. One of the ways that we can neglect heart health, whether it's spiritually or physically, is we avoid the whole thing altogether. And so I go on ambulance calls in Waco, and one of the first things I ask is, so what kind of medical problems do you have? Oh, I don't have any. Well, when's the last time you saw a doctor? 20 years ago? So there's a significance in that there's not anything not going on with them. They're just ignoring it, and they're not informed on what's going on inside their body. So you've got these people who are vibrant, full of life, love Jesus. They come to church, and they get into the Sunday routine, and that's it. That they are kind of ignoring their spiritual heart health. That they can just coast along and do their own thing and really ignore what's going on inside and the heart junk that we carry around for 20 years. Because nobody prods them. Nobody says, hey, what's up? What's going on? So what did you and Jesus talk about today? You know, where's God moving? And so I have a huge, long story if y'all want to hear about the rest of how this happened. But the point is that they ignore it. They don't care. And so one day they're walking along, and all of a sudden they can't walk, they can't talk. They got this pain in their chest. They are short of breath. They're sweating. They're like, I'm going to die. That I want to know if that's going to happen to me, because I want to be close to a good hospital. Like, I don't want to just be walking along and be like, okay, and then all of a sudden it hit me like a ton of bricks. And that's how heart attacks happen. You could be standing up, sitting down, watching TV, mowing the grass. It doesn't matter. It just happens. And so there's ways to know that this is going to happen. And I feel like that happens in our spiritual life too. That we can walk along, do our own thing, go to church on Sunday, feel good about ourselves because we're sitting in church instead of watching the Super Bowl or the race that's on TV. And so we feel good that we did that and think that, you know, that's all we have to do. But we're really still ignoring heart disease and the heart junk that we have. So the second way that we can neglect heart health is withhold information. So let's say I go to my yearly checkup. My doctor's like, hey, what's going on? Oh, I'm great. Walking into church. Hey, what's going on? Mark's doing great. He's got some overtime. We got extra money coming in. Lane's starting a kindergarten now. Just lost his first tooth last night. That really happened. And, you know, I avoid it. And so I tell them things that are going on in my life, but I'm not saying, like, work is really hard for me right now because me and my boss are not getting along. And so I find that probably this one's more common, that we walk in and we just withhold information. So I go to the doctor, and they're like, what's going on? Oh, I'm good. So they run the test. They run the EKG. They draw the blood. They do the stress test. And they do all these things to look for something. And at the end, I go and I say, hey, did you find anything? No, you're good. See you next year. And so I walk out with this false assurance that everything's okay, knowing in the back of my mind that I didn't reveal the whole truth, that I can't walk 10 feet without getting winded, that I feel like sometimes I can feel my heart beating, or I feel my pulse and it's irregular. And so these things that I know would have been pertinent to this checkup and this evaluation and this examination, I withhold it, and I prevent the thoroughness of the tests that are run. Walk into church, hey, how you doing? I'm great. The whole idea behind what we do is examine hearts. So it would be silly for me to walk into church and just put up this blinder that everything's cool, you know, I can work it out. And whenever we have so many people here that have gifts and stepping into people's lives, and there's people who are leaders who have gone to seminary and know about things, and there's prayer warriors in this church like I've never seen, and there's so many of them that I can walk in. There's a great group of ladies who always encourage me every time I walk in here. And I find that wonderful because I've been in a few churches and that doesn't always happen. And the fact that I know that whenever I go home that they are praying for me and my family, and that is just wonderful to me. And so I walk in and I put on the blinders and everything's fine when it's really not. And I rob them of this opportunity for God to use them as a tool to enter my life and to encourage me and to help me work and walk out what God has planned for me. And so basically what's at stake is rest. That God says if you're obedient, you enter his rest. You come up on the river, God's like, it's okay, it's right there, go get it. Wade through the river and go get it. It's rest, it's an invitation, take it. There's people here that want to help, that they really have open hearts. And so to put on blinders is not only hurting you, it's robbing somebody of a blessing to know that they were used today. So we've walked in, we've withheld information, we live in this 99% accountability, thinking that everything's okay. That's a dangerous spot to be in. You're like, oh yeah, I did my thing. I went to church and, I prayed and sang the song and got the sticker and the t-shirt and went home. And basically, I'm just going to come right out and be like, that's a lie. It's a lie. It may look great on the outside. Jesus totally turned everything around. Moses set up the law. That's what Hebrews says. Moses came, set up the law. Jesus walks in, says, that ain't good enough. What's in here is what matters, and that's all I care about. I don't care if you go to church on Sunday, although that's a really good thing. But he cares about what's going on. What are you holding back? Monique talked last week about her father setting aside this one part of him. What are you setting aside? That's what Jesus wants. He doesn't care about all this other stuff. What are you holding back? And so allow people to be encouraging to you and to edify you to walk in obedience. That's the whole point. That the reason why we come together and have community, the whole point is that they are here to encourage you. You are here to encourage them. So, what's at stake is the rest that God has promised us. What's at stake is the relationship with the living God, that it's not about coming to church on Sunday, that you come and you get with a group of people who love God and love Jesus and fall at his feet on Sunday morning and get excited by singing songs or whatever it is, jump up and down and clap and sing, and that's amazing that we even have that opportunity. So the second way that we can prevent heart disease is encourage one another day after day, as long as it is called today, that none of you will be hardened by the deceitfulness of sin. So you're holding that back, and we don't want it to blind us, because it will. It's in there. It's the plaque buildup. I actually have a picture in the slideshow somewhere about the plaque buildup. There it is. All right, so that's pretty nasty. That's really what plaque buildup inside your arteries looks like. And so spiritually, I want to be right here. Physically, I really want to be right here, because I don't want to be blinded by shortness of breath, chest pain, and sweating and don't know what's going on. But this, in reality, this is where I've been for 6 years. And so I'm standing up before you now, kind of being transparent, that this now for the last 3 months is where I've been. And that this is what I want to walk in. And I want to encourage you to walk in this right here. Don't carry that around. And we have such a wonderful church that is here and ready to take you from here to clean and open and vibrant and life, and the blood flows great through here. Life's in the blood, amen? It ain't flowing through there. Open up the arteries, allow him to work and get in there and roto-rooter that stuff out. So, the cure. Encouragement. It doesn't say anything about judging. That somebody, I've had people come up to me, and my first tendency is, that you are bad. And that's me. And so I can push that aside and say, Jesus, what do you want me to do? And so the whole idea is that you encourage them, that your encouragement helps me prevent heart disease in my life, and that I can walk to you and I can be that encouragement to you and prevent heart disease in your life. So the question is, how do we encourage one another? There's lots of different ways. the scriptures say that the nature of encouragement that you need from me and that I need from you is that we are encouraged to walk in obedience. I didn't want to be standing up here today. I like it over there behind a guitar. I don't want to be standing here responsible for 50 people listening to me being vulnerable about where Jesus is at in my life. I don't want to be here. I promise I don't. Here I am walking in obedience. So while I was writing all this stuff down, because Christy was like, write it down, and I'm like, I really don't want to. I was praying. I was like, God, so I've had so many people come to me with different things, especially at work. Because in EMS, there's not really a whole lot of Christians that are in my field. And so I've had people come to me with things, and so they know that I'm a believer and that I try to follow Jesus. And, who have I judged? Who have I not encouraged? That they have come to me and I have not encouraged. So he doesn't know that I'm going to talk about this. So God's like, your husband. And I feel like, everything starts at the house. That, I'm working on me and I'm trying to be obedient and I'm writing this down. So God's like, okay, insert husband. So here, I'm standing here and he's probably going to get on to me later for saying any of this. Whenever we got married, we lived in Georgetown. And we really loved this church, and so we didn't want to go find a new church. I'm not about going and finding a new church home. And so we would come up here on the weekend, and occasionally we would come into church. And for about 2 to 3 years, I would send little messages in his lunch and leave little verses on his steering wheel and write him little text messages about whatever God was talking to me about, just trying to encourage him that God loves him and that I'm here for him, and trying to encourage him to be a leader in our household and not just be a provider. And that is, God has blessed me with such a wonderful husband. He's a wonderful provider, and I didn't I didn't praise his strengths, and I didn't encourage his weaknesses. That after 2 years, that I was able to step back and say, I'm done, I'm wore out. Because it was me. I wasn't really allowing Jesus to use me as a tool for him and encourage him to step up into that leadership role. That I thought that I knew what we needed, and that I was going to kind of force that on him instead of being like, Jesus, you've got all of these things going on inside of me. I know they're going on inside of him. What's going on? And so I judged him. I was like, he's not doing what he's supposed to be doing. And so I didn't encourage him. I stopped. After 2 years, I decided it was easier for me to just step away, even in my own life with Jesus, step away so that I wouldn't have to face the disappointment. So I've been walking in this for 6 years, and I've realized that I've put Mark in Jesus' spot, that I thought that he could fulfill me, and so I've been really convicted about that. And so Jesus is back on the pedestal, and Mark's right next to me. And so I haven't allowed him in my life to be encouraging to me either, that I kept putting on, you're supposed to be doing this, that this is what I want you to do, instead of, where does Jesus want us? What are we going to do? And so that's me being transparent right now, so that's really hard for me to do. So now we're back to the open and flowing and getting heart junk out, and so encouraging one another to walk in the obedience. And so that's why I'm standing here, and that's why he's sitting in the front seat. So we've gone from, I told you about the Israelites, and now the life application, that this is what God has spoke to me just through these few verses. So I'm going to put it back into context so that we can understand maybe a little more about what's going on. So the Israelites failed to walk in obedience, and because of their disobedience, they didn't enter into God's rest. God was like, no, you're going to wander in the desert for 40 years until that generation passes away, and then they eventually get out, which is the good side of the story. So in Hebrews 3, 7, and 8, today if you hear his voice, do not harden your hearts. Take the steps forward, because sometimes they're scary or nerve-wracking, like right now. Obedience is not always logical. You don't think that what God's calling you to do is going to happen, because you just can't wrap your mind around where God's leading you and the path that he wants you to walk in. And sometimes it's not always rational, but I promise you 100% without a shadow of a doubt, it is always better. So encourage one another day after day while it's still called today. That's the warning. There's a sense of urgency there that I feel like if you just read this, that you could easily pass over. That today is something that we need to really dwell on. And so we encourage one another so that it becomes the habit of our lives. Not that we go to church on every Sunday and do our thing, but that we walk in this encouragement and that it becomes like second nature to us. And that we have all these people who come in and want something, they want to be encouraged. And if we walk in that obedience, that it will happen, that it will be second nature, that God will use us more and more as a tool. And the whole idea behind today, that there's not a guarantee of tomorrow. Nobody knows when Jesus is coming back. I'm ready, but we don't know if he's coming today, tomorrow, 20 years from now. And so nobody's promised tomorrow. When is that heart attack going to happen? We don't know. So today, there's definitely an urgency there. So if you have the opportunity to walk in obedience and encourage somebody, or just be open to receiving whatever anybody can say encouragement into your life, that you walk into this time of what we do is examine hearts, that you are open and transparent, and that you allow people to encourage you, that I would stand before you and say, I'm open to whatever encouragement God has for you to give to me. And that I allow that blessing to happen in your life, and that you would allow that blessing in my life, like right now. That just because we're obedient, that God will move. And I'm ready for that to happen. So here's a few things that I'm going to leave you with. I tried to make that short and sweet. But so go get your heart checked out. Physically, that's great too. But spiritually, like, even if it's just you and God, just go somewhere where you can sit down and really say, what is inside of me? Do I have the plaque buildup? Do I have open arteries? Is my heart vibrant? What do I need? What do I need to pull out? What am I setting aside? What am I not allowing you to work on? And whether that's with a spouse, one of the elders of the church, a co-worker, I'm blessed to have all of those right now to be able to hold me accountable. Just go and be honest. Don't put the blinders on. Don't ignore it, because there's a disease process there that's happening, whether you know it or not, whether you want to step in and receive that diagnosis of heart disease or not, it's there. Whether you're open to receive it or not, it's there. So today, do it today while it's still called today.